Standing on B side, whether you like it or not, you start wondering, how much that the outcome of this game actually depends on me? And today, I'm gonna answer that. To do so, I watched a ton of demos and logged detailed stats for every B anchor into an Excel sheet. Ended up with a shitload of numbers, so yeah, my nickname is Sasok, let's break this down. Today, we have 50 players under the gun. I only pick demos with high average elo, around 3500. Everyone knows the unwritten FACEIT rule. Whoever has more elo gets to choose their position. As a result, the lowest rated goblins usually ends up anchoring B.
I'm trash.
But how true is that? Now look at the screen. Yes, that rectangle in front of your fucking face. As we can see, in 34 out of 50 cases, the B anchor is played by someone with below average elo in their team. Moreover, the highest rated player played B only 6 times. This shows a massive unwillingness to hold the shitty side, which honestly isn't that surprising. Now let's move to the demos. In every round, I assigned players a rating. Red, if he fed like an idiot. Yellow, if he did about 20% of impact. Green, if he did more than 20% of impact. And black, if in my opinion he couldn't influence the round at all. There's also purple when the player technically couldn't affect the outcome, but pulled off a miracle, doesn't matter. I also assigned each round a direction, A, B or mid. It's often inaccurate and subjective, but I think you can shut the fuck up and just watch what the data says. Since our beloved B anchors sit on B, let's start there. A total of 156 rounds were played on B. 70 ended in success for City and 86 ended like complete garbage. If you look closer at the 71 rounds, in 20 of them B player played really bad. 29 rounds they made about 20% of impact, and in 21 rounds they played really well. But in order to make a conclusion, we have to compare it to the lost rounds. So let's look at them. 56 rounds complete dogshit performance, 20 rounds about 20% of impact, and 6 rounds actually played well. There were also 4 rounds where the anchor couldn't influence the outcome at all, but we'll get back to that later. Now here's where it gets interesting. In lost rounds, the B anchor dies without any obvious value for the team twice as often. In other words, he feeds like a complete whore. He gets his frag twice less often and gets double kills or more 4 times less often. If you use a bit of math magic, we can visualize this shit clearly. If the anchor dies without a frag, the round is almost guaranteed lost. If he gets 2 or more kills, it's almost a guaranteed win. As for those 4 rounds where the anchor couldn't influence anything, that's just a limitation of the data. You see, players don't always go to the same spot every round, and in this case, those rounds were ecos or pistols. So in that case, let's take a look at the same data, but excluding eco and pistol rounds. Ladies and gentlemen, the numbers on your screens. The same trends remain in buy rounds. However, comparing both graphs with win probability, we can reach an interesting conclusion. The anchor's death isn't as critical as it seems. About 1/3 of rounds where the anchor feeds are still won. This is due to how hard it is for terrorists to take B. If the anchor survives until help arrives, then even if he dies later, it's no longer the deciding factor. So, B executes make about a quarter of all rounds. Most of them are lost, and most losses happen because of the anchor. But maybe B anchors are better at rotations? What about A hits? Let me just put my eggs on the table and say this. In almost 40% of such rounds, the B anchor cannot influence the outcome at all. 40%, Carl! And keep in mind, there are 50% more A executes than B executes. Remember the purple rating? I added it to track rounds where the anchor technically shouldn't impact the outcome, but wins it solo. It's about clutches. You know how many times that happened in 566 rounds? 5. Compared to B, the player shows himself much less. He simply doesn't have the opportunity. But Sasok, you can push ups, rotate early, play second short. Go fuck yourself.
Green, what's your problem, Green?
Now about mid rounds. These are rounds where the point of no return happened there, or long rounds where most action happened in mid. On mid, the situation isn't much better than on A. In about 1/3 of rounds, the B anchor doesn't participate at all, and notably, in many 1 rounds, his help wasn't needed. This suggests that if mid gets lost, the anchor still has a chance to join the game, unlike A. Seeing that in half of lost rounds the B anchor dies without a frag, I initially thought, well, no surprise, such a high number indicates how important this role is. But now, a plot twist. I bring out an ace from my sock, a control group of con players, where in 50% of cases the highest rated player was playing, by the way. If that 50% made you think about player importance, take a look here. We are only looking at lost rounds across all three directions, A, B and mid. So what do you think? How often does the con player die without a frag in a lost round? 60%, 65%? That 50% number on B side should already give you a hint. Reminder, for the B anchor in these rounds that number is 65. For A side it's 76 and for mid a whopping 83. But wait, those are just lost rounds, what about the won ones? Yeah, for B hits it's still pretty high, 36%. But for mid and A, it barely goes over 10. Meanwhile, green rounds, and let me remind you, those are multi-kills, make up 29 and 38%, that's a fucking lot. This tells us that wins are forged here, on active positions. What kind of team play are we even talking about if your feeding doesn't even matter? Right now, B anchor is empty space. A place someone runs to out of desperation, running away from taking responsibility and playing actively. I watched 50 players and only a couple of them actually tried to adapt mid-game. The overwhelming majority, myself included, just played by the book and just kept jumping. Now, an interesting observation about the numbers. If you know you're going to play B, would you rather start T or CT side? The correct answer should be T. Look here, two main columns. On the left, players who started T side. On the right, those who started CT. Each of these columns is split into two, T side stats and CT side stats, separately. At the bottom you've got the average and median values. And as you can see, if you take all matches, the difference is minimal, basically with a margin of error. But now let's look only at matches where the B anchor actually won. Look at both sides, stats of the winners. B side is basically killing your potential.